Today on My First Concert.
Prince ended up using them on his, I think it was Love Sexy, as his background singers. As well as basically took the whole band. But, I don't think he was going to replace Sheila E. with me. I think she's got a better shot. She had a better shot.
I think she looks better than you, Joey.
Yeah,
sorry.
We compared legs and it was a no contest.
Welcome back to My First Concert. Dave Lee here with Davide Rosso, and we are happy to have Joey Finger join us. He is a super talent. So many of those of you who follow Minnesota music know his name, but he was performing with a lot of acts for a long time before he came back home, and we're thrilled that he would take the time to join us. It's all brought to you by AquariusHomeservices.com from the AquariusHomeservices.com studio, and also by our friends at Star Bank, our bank here at Talk North. By the way, you can download these on Apple, Spotify, TalkNorth.com, wherever you get your podcast. Joey, thanks a million for coming on, and great to see you. Appreciate your time. The first question, of course, obviously, is the name of the show, My First Concert. Very curious to know, what was the first concert you saw outside of performing one? I'll ask you about that later. But
I was really sure I knew the answer to that, and then I started really thinking about it. And I remember now, I went to a concert with my brother, and it's really interesting. The idea was that he was going to college, and for one of his classes, he had to go to this concert, and it was a predominantly black culture concert. It was a band called Graham Central Station, and I was just a kid. And we went, and it was like we were the only white people in the place. And it was really, really interesting to me. I was like, wow, I guess I was about 12. And I thought it was the coolest thing on the planet. And the opening band, I came to find out later, was a band out of Minneapolis. I'm going to get the name wrong, so I'm not even going to try, because there's going to be people out there that'll be critical of that. But Prince was the guitar player in the opening act.
Oh, wow.
You know what? How lucky do you get? That's your first concert. And it just infected me so big time. I didn't understand any of the comments that were being yelled at the stage, because, here I am, this East Side white kid, and I'm like, this is really different. And I was talking to my brother, and he was a great, and still is a great guitar player. But he was asked to do that as part of a class. So it was educational for him and really educational for me. And I think it infected me with that rhythm and blues feel. I just fell in love with the whole idea. That was my first concert.
Now, as young as you were, Joey, were you into music at that point as well? Were you playing?
I played drums in my basement. My brother, being the guitar player that he was, he used to have people come over and practice. And the place was in our basement, and our stairs were treacherous. I mean, forget about getting a drum set down there, okay? So my brother bought this drum set that looked like it was 3 different drum sets thrown together, and set it up down there with some duct tape. And he said, "Don't even think about touching these," to me. So of course that backfires no matter who you're talking to.
Yeah.
You tell a 12-year-old kid, don't touch it.
Yeah, you're better off saying, "Go touch these things for me." Yeah.
Yeah. By all means, you got to stay down there all day, and you'll never do it. But I practiced, and I used to go down there and listen to all kinds of records and play. I knew what time he got out of school, so I would go down there, and I got it wrong one day. I got way too far into it, and he came around the corner. I thought I was a dead man. There was no exit in our basement either. It was just like, you're trapped. And the irony of it was it ended up being the best thing, because he said, well, if you're going to do this, you're going to do this the right way. You're going to play, thinking about what the other guys are trying to make happen. You're not just going to be the only guy on stage in any band. So you got to think about what you're trying to do. It's a team effort. It's a team kind of a sport, if you will, to play in a band, especially to play drums. You're laying a foundation. You got to have dynamics. You got to have really good, strong meter. And I'm like, whatever that is, 12 years old. Yeah, I'll do that. That's okay. Just don't kill me for playing your drums.
You mentioned, and of course you've played with so many people. The Osmonds, Debbie Gibson, Boz Scaggs, Bryan White. A lot of people you've played in their bands. But I'm curious because you mentioned that band, Joey, Graham Central Station.
And it was actually Larry Graham's band, from what I remember. And I'm so sorry. If I thought of this like 3 minutes ago, and I would have done research, and I would have went, okay, I don't want to get this wrong. But the truth is the truth. That was my first station, and I'm exposing myself to what I didn't study for I didn't do my homework today, so sorry about that. But honestly, it was Graham Central Station.
The reason I think about that is because one of the things with musicians, at some point when you're in a band, Joey, somebody's got to come up with a name. So in that case, the Graham Central Station. But there was a band you played in, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kleenex.
Oh God, where did you get that? That's just one of those. This is that moment that whatever moment on the talk shows where you just go, okay, like Taylor Swift when they had footage of her after she had her operation, she was walking around all delirious. But okay, so yeah, let's talk about it. My name is Joey Finger, and I play in Kleenex. Kill me now.
But it is interesting. You got to have a band name, and there's plenty of them. You played with some great bands too. But the first concert that you performed, Joey, what was that?
Well, technically, it was in high school. I played in the band what would have been called jazz band or concert band. And the really interesting part about that is I just wanted it so bad. I practiced and played. We moved when I was about going into ninth grade to Forest Lake, Minnesota, from the east side of St. Paul. So I was a city mouse, turned into a country mouse, and bored out of my mind. So all I did was play drums. I just sat in the basement and played drums. I didn't know any of the kids where I lived, and so I spent all my time playing drums. And I decided that when I saw the classes that you could take, they said band and concert band and all this stuff, and I didn't know what prerequisite meant. So I just signed up. I said, yeah, I want to be in band. And I showed up, and it takes about a week for them to go through and assign what they call chairs. Who's first chair, who's second chair, in order of talent and ability. So when they got to me, I had already been in band for about a week. And I walked in, and he said, okay, so let me see you play here. Grab your sticks and play this. And he laid some sheet music in front of me, and I just looked at him and I said, no chance. I don't read. And he goes, how did you get into band? And I said, well, I know how to read, just not music. I can read. And he said, well, then you should have been able to read prerequisite. And that was that I had been in band prior to that, and that I was able to read music. And I said, look, all I do is play my drums. It was just one of these come to Jesus moments where I said, all I do is play drums. All I want to do is play drums. What do I got to do? And he said, well, what do you play, a drum set? And I said, yeah. And so he broke his own policy and took me down the hall to an empty band room where there was a drum set. And he said, play me something. And that was the first moment where the heat was on, where it was like, okay, and many more to come later in my life, where it's like, okay, somebody's listening right now. I need to be good. And I played, and he said, okay, but you have to learn how to read music. We can, give you some drum set parts. And little did I know that every other drummer in the band was going to want to kill me because I got all the drum set parts, and that's all they had to sit there and play the bass drum with the mallet. and they had to sit there and play cymbals, and I'm over there playing drum set, and they just wanted to kill me. They just hated me. But that's how it started. That was my first concert. I was playing drums in my high school in Forest Lake, Minnesota, and it infected me in a huge way. They clapped. They actually clapped.
Oh, wow. Then you go on to have a great local career here in the Twin Cities before you left, I think in the mid 90s, and went out west. But about that time you left, Joey, man, and you were part of that music scene, there was some super talent in this town. You were a huge part of it, obviously, but I know you played with Mick Sterling and the Stud Brothers, but the bands here in the Twin Cities were red hot. That had to be kind of a fun time to be a musician, I would think.
It was phenomenal. Because the world's eye was on Minneapolis, and it felt that way. It really did. Our little local music awards became almost like the Oscars. All these different networks are there because they know Prince is going to be there, or his entourage, or the people that Terry and Jimmy Jam, Terry Lewis, that were being produced here. Janet Jackson, Alexandra O'Neill, all these different great talents that ended up being national talents. So it was exciting. I was with a family called the Steels back then, who they came from a gospel background in Gary, Indiana, and they're still around, and they're just amazing in every way. I really got a crash course in all the different stuff that they had been exposed to, especially the gospel thing. And then we were making a stab at being a national act. Prince ended up using them on his, I think it was Lovesexy, as his background singers, and as well as basically took the whole band. But I don't think he was going to replace Sheila E. with me. I think she's got a better shot. She had a better shot. I think
she looks better than you, Joey.
Yeah,
sorry.
We compared legs, and it was a no contest.
Well, you're a runner, though. You got those good runner legs, I'm sure, that it had to be.
Hey, I got a Sheila E. story. I'll make it quick. So they came down. Prince came down, brought Sheila. Sheila was just looking super fine. And they got up on stage, and Sheila came back to play my drums. And normally I would just get off the stage, but there was room. So I just kind of hung back, handed her my sticks. And she sat down, and she had these pants on. They just were the legs were like, really big, open the pants to her, legs to her pants. And she starts playing. And if you realize, when you hit the bass drum with the mallet has to go from back to forward. Well, it was hooking her pants leg. So it wasn't hitting the bass drum. She goes, "Joey, will you roll up my pants?" And I said, "Every day for the rest of my life."
Brody.
Yeah.
So,
I wonder if she's coming to the Dakota pretty soon, too, I think. Sheila E. is. And you mentioned the Steels. Geraldine's a very close friend, and we've been friends for years, but she was telling me when they grew up in Gary, you mentioned Gary, they grew up with the Jackson family. So the Jacksons were there, and they played together out on the street. And I can imagine if they were doing a little doo-wop or a cappella out on the street, that's some powerful singing going on right there.
Yeah, maybe it was in the water. I don't know. These guys, came out of there just smoking. It's a cultural thing. To sit together in church and just really let it all hang out. You find that spirit, and that's what people hear. They don't realize it. There's talent out there that's like, just kind of like worked up. But then there's that God-given, like, oh man, I'm hearing something. I don't know what it is, but it's definitely rattling my soul. And that's what they have.
Hey, Joey, when we come back, take a short break, I want to ask you about 96 and moving out to the West Coast. And then some great things happened in your career. And and not just drumming, but you went on to wear a lot of hats. So I'll ask you about that in a second. I do want to thank our friends, our bank here at Talk North is Star Bank, for making this possible. So I don't know if you're looking at repairs this spring or are you looking to expand your business, whatever. They take care of this stuff. It's a family-owned bank, been around Minnesota for years, still family-owned. They're right here in the Metro, too. I think one of the cool things they do is they get real involved in the communities they're in. And it just kind of shows you the kind of trust and relationships they've built up through these many years. So whether that's that home equity line of credit, it's a home mortgage, maybe you're thinking, I got to get that RV I've always thought about. Maybe you're out in the field and operating ag equipment needs some more of that. That's kind of how they started. But I just encourage you to get your loan needs met at Star Bank. And it's a wonderful Minnesota-based bank. And by the way, again, when you call, there's no hold times. They actually answer their phone in person. It's kind of how banking should be. You want the digital experience like all of us do, they have that too. But just call your local Star Bank branch today. Don't be surprised when a live person answers. And just stop in at your convenience. They're really good at what they do. The loans are subject to a loan application approval. It's starbank.net. Check that out when you get a chance. Member FDIC and equal housing lender. But that's important stuff in your life. And it's fun to tell you about a company that we trust so much. That's who we use right here at our network. Well, Joey Finger's nice enough to join us here in the Twin Cities. You made a move out to L.A. for a while. It turned out to be a very successful move for him. And Joey, let's talk about that. I've also heard, you kind of got to know the musicians off the Tonight Show, if I recall that right, out in L.A. And that was, and I don't know if Ed O'Shaughnessy was one of your favorites, the drummer, because he was kind of a showman for that band a little bit when we'd watch the Tonight Show as kids.
Amazing drummer, amazing band. Even the different renditions of the band. I mean, Tommy Peterson was in the band, and Bruce, I think, I'm trying to remember Bruce's last name, but these guys were had that Minnesota connection, the Peterson family, you know what I mean? So Tommy, I went and saw the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, and Tommy was playing, and then, Ed, of course. And, the funny thing is it was just when I went that first time, and then the next night, there's Ed playing in some little dive bar. It was just culture shock for me. I'm like, wait a minute, this guy's famous and he's playing in some bar? What happened? I mean, and so that was my first, introductory to the ever-changing scale of what a musician has to do to stay alive.
Yes, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I was like, that just seems wrong. Doesn't he have a 401k? I mean, what, I don't know. I mean, but then I spent most of my life explaining that to other people. It's no, it is actually the most extreme, change in climate that you could possibly imagine. I played Joe Louis Arena 3 nights in a row. Opening for the New Kids on the Block with Paul Peterson. He was St. Paul at the time. My next job was, and the sign at my next job, the biggest sign that was there said Fish Fry. And the band was some little lettering underneath it. At the VFW in Savage, I was playing with Dr. Mambo's Combo, and the place smelled like fish. That's a swing. Yeah. I mean, that is a swing.
Well, it keeps you humble, that's for sure. But, drummer, producer, songwriter, and also a tour manager. So I want to ask you about, I don't know if I have this right, the Boxing Gandhis opened for Dave Matthew Band, is that right?
Yeah, the Boxing Gandhis were actually a band that, now that's kind of why I ended up in L.A., just to, make sure I'm understanding the reference to Boxing Gandhis. The reason but the Boxing Gandhis are key is that a friend of mine that also a Minneapolis drummer who's passed away, our dearly departed Jamie Ches, he was living in L.A. at the time, and I was here playing with Mick Sterling, and what ended up happening is he got the gig with the Boxing Gandhis, okay? Now, that's a funny name. And I'm like, hey, whatever. They are going out with Dave Matthews. And he said, look, my place is going to be sitting here empty, okay? And I've got a bunch of gigs that I'm going to have to give away. Why don't you come out here and check out the scene? I'll give you my gigs. You can stay at my place. It's a good opportunity. And I'm like, you're absolutely right. I got to do this. So I talked to Mick. I called Mick and I said, look, I got to do this. He said, go for it. I said, if it doesn't work, I'll come back. And he's like, yeah, I don't know, man. Maybe it's time for a change. And I'm like going, okay. All right. So what I did is I let him know how important he was to me. And I guess it was, he was trying to maybe work with other people. We had been in the same band for like 12 years. It was like, okay, it's like an old girlfriend. All right. Yeah. All right. We're broken up. Let's move on. But I ended up going out. And here's the funny part about this is I moved out there. I brought my drum set. I had my truck. I was there for about a week and a half. And Jamie comes back and they had gotten kicked off the tour. And he said, I want my gigs back. And I'm like, dude, I moved all the way out here. I lost my job and all this other crap. You got to be kidding me. You're going to make it. And by the way, I want my bed back too. So it's like, well, where am I going to sleep? So I ended up getting some kind of a mattress to throw on the floor. And man, I'll tell you, everything sounds like that just was a big disaster. That was the greatest time. That was like the greatest time. Because now I had to like, okay, I'm in it. I'm here. I know a few people. Let me just see what I can make happen.
And then things, there's a lot of things that happened, but one of those was, and I don't know if you were a country music fan. I know you were always a jazz fan, as we talked about already, but Bryan White. So how did that happen? He's a country singer and had a few hits, and you end up working with him.
Again, kind of like lightning hitting in some random place. Honestly, I was in the Valley, and I was putting together this some assembly required computer desk. Then I was on my third day. It was unbelievable.
Yeah,
so I was like, okay, I don't get this. And the phone rings and it's Paul Peterson. And Paul and my dear friend Rick Barron, who is absolutely amazing, who you should have on this show as well. If you get the chance, he's just an amazing singer, writer, musician. Anyways, they had somehow, and the story on Paul, I'll spare you the story on how Paul met Bryan, but had something to do with bunkers, and Bryan was playing at Target Center. Mm-hmm. So I'll leave that alone. But Paul called me and he goes, what are you doing right now? And I said, well, I'm sitting here, and it was hot, so I was literally in my underwear putting together a computer desk. So he said, do you think you could be in Nashville tomorrow? And I went, is there a reason for this? And he just said, well, there's this guy. Have you ever heard of Bryan White? And I said, Brian McKnight, you mean? And he said, no, Bryan White. And I said, well, that's a no. It doesn't ring a bell. Well, he's a pretty big country star, and they're looking for a drummer. And I'm like, I've never been in a country band. And he said, from what I'm hearing, that means that you're probably perfect for the job, because they're trying to make everything feel a little bit, and they're huge Prince fans. And I told them you're a Minneapolis drummer, so they're kind of like curious already. So can you get on a plane and be here tomorrow morning? And I'm like, I'm in my underwear, dude. I'm like, I don't even know the songs. And it's like, I came up with every objection, and then I realized, you know what? This is a big opportunity. So I I called my girlfriend at the time, and I said, will you go buy every Bryan White record you can find? They didn't, the internet wasn't quite what it is today, so I couldn't look them up. And so we went and bought the 3 CDs he had out, and brought it back there. And I called another friend that worked on American Airlines and said, I need to be on a plane to Nashville tonight. Is there any way I can get there for under $1 million? And so she hooked me up, and I learned I never played the material. I learned it listening to it on the plane. I flew in, and here's the funny part is I landed, took a cab to the hotel that Paul and Rick Barron were staying at, and I met them in the parking lot. And there's Bryan, and there's the musical director, and they're going golfing. And I am absolute processed, just crap looking, right? I'm like tired, red-eye guy. And I'm like, oh, yeah, great first impression, guys. Yeah, how you doing? Nice to meet you. I'm going to go sleep. You guys have a nice day of golf. So that turned out to be this amazing day in so many different respects. I don't know how long you want me to go on that, but I had to go to this audition. And another funny thing happened because they had thought they had this really elaborate, really nice rehearsal space called Soundcheck reserved. But the tour manager thought they'd be done by that day because they auditioned every drummer in Nashville. Every drummer in Nashville, okay? And it was like, okay, well, we're running out of guys. We got 2 or 3 guys to look at today, and this guy from Minneapolis is coming in. So they've set up a drum set in Brian's garage, and it was just like tuck under garage, and they didn't have a mic stand, so they hung the microphone stand or microphone for Bryan White, 6 number 1 hits, and they're hanging a microphone over the rafters and hanging it down in front of his face. And I'm like going, wow, why did I get on a plane? These guys don't have it going on, So I sit down, I start kind of warming up, and I figured out why they had gone through all the drummers in Nashville. Because the first thing he started playing, now remember, I was in the Stud Brothers for 12 years. They started playing James Brown. A country band testing their drummer by playing James Brown. And I'm like, well, this is my turf. I know what to do now. So I just literally lit up as I was nervous at that point. I'm like, this is not going to go well. I've never been in a country band. So we're playing James Brown, and Brian's kind of, stomping his foot over there, and then, the bass player's dancing, and everybody seems pretty happy to me. So it was really bizarre, but that was the test piece for the audition, and I got the gig.
Wow. And the rest is musical history. In fact, I want to ask you about some of the venues you played, whether it be with Debbie Gibson or the Osmonds or David Sanborn or Boz Scaggs, and some of the venues that you played through these years. We're talking with Joey Finger. As I mentioned, he's a drummer. He's a great musician, but he's a producer. He's been a tour manager. He's songwriter. So he's touched all the bases in the world of music. Hey, I want to say thank you to the folks at Aquarius Home Services for making this possible. They'll elevate your water quality with Connecticut, the ultimate water treatment system. It's what I have. Experience purified water with zero payment until 2025. Bid farewell to the spotty dishes, the rust stains. Say hello to the softer hair and skin. Plus, you'll marvel at the minimal salt usage. And that, I remember after I first got this, after a few months, I went, I don't think it's using salt. It really hardly uses any. And you can act fast right now this month because this offer ends at month's end, and that's not all. It's also the perfect time to upgrade your HVAC system. So you'll dive into comfort with a new high-efficiency heating and cooling system and pay nothing until next year. Act now. Financing offers are subject to credit approval. I'd trust Aquarius like I have for over 2 decades to keep you cozy and delighted all year long. Financing offers are subject to credit approval. Aquarius believes in earning the right to be recommended. They're just a click away at AquariusHomeservices.com. My good friend Jeff over there is there when he started that company all those years ago, and they're doing great, to say the least. That's an understatement. Joey Finger, another Minnesota musician who's done great things, continues to do that as well. Hey, Joey, just out of curiosity, you talk about one night you're playing a Joe Louis Arena, next night you're playing at a fish fry, or Ed O'Shaughnessy suddenly showing up at a little bar. But all those years now with Bryan White, with Boz Scaggs, with David Sanborn, with Debbie Gibson, who I think you're still quite close to, the Osmonds. Any of those concerts, any of those venues that you played with them, anything stand out above the others?
Man, I guess. Okay, so yeah, there's a few, but the first thing that came to my mind, and not in any real order, I guess the first show with Bryan White at the Target Center on New Year's Eve, and my mom in the 5th row. I gotta say that was pretty hard to beat.
Yeah,
sold out, and I mean, everybody wants to make their mom proud, but that was a particularly proud mother moment. to see her boy up there, and and it was really interesting because he introduced the band. He saved me for last, and I'm the new guy, but I'm in Minneapolis. I'm home, and all he had to say, and from Minneapolis, Minnesota, Joey Finger on the drums, and it was like I almost got scared. It was so loud.
Wow. Yeah,
I was like, oh wow, they wow, okay, that's a big crowd. Full house, Target Center. So, and then among other things, playing with Boz, one of the gigs I did with him was particularly great. I'm sorry, Boz. Yeah, there was an outdoor festival in Canada that I've never seen that many people in my life, and it was like on a ski hill, and the ski hill was all people. I mean, it was like, it was a festival, and that turned out to be pretty amazing. And he could not have been nicer. I mean, let's face it. I had a come to Jesus moment where it was like, I realized looking at the drums that was one of my idols. That was his gig. Jeff Porcaro was a drummer that changed the way that I think as a drummer, changed the way that I breathe, look, feel, and what the understanding of the chair. And that was his job. Jeff recorded all those great songs, Low Down. That was all Jeff Porcaro. And so, when you get to sit in your hero's chair, there's a moment. Yeah, I guess the other thing that I really thought was special was playing with David Sanborn. We were the after game entertainment for the Boston Red Sox.
Oh, wow.
And so we went to, I think it's Fenway, right? Isn't that their club?
Yeah, that's sure is.
So we get to see the game. And that band was legends. All right. Everybody in that band was amazing. Not to mention the Boz band, too. I mean, we're talking David Sanborn's band was Don Elias, who, no question, one of the most percussive and amazing drummer percussionists in the world. Richard Patterson, bass player, played with Miles Davis, is one of my favorite all-time bass players. Ricky Peterson, which is, I owe him a lot. He made it possible for me to bridge into these things that there was probably 10,000 other drummers that they could have, selected. And Ricky said, call this guy. He'll do the job. He'll show up. He'll do his homework. We won't have any issues. And I made sure that every one of those things was true because I knew what a gesture that was. And then you got Nicky Morrock on guitar, who has played with more great artists. He's the East Coast guy. It was just a treat. Anyways, we get a chance to play for the Boston Red Sox, but we get to go to the game, So they gave us our own little cabana. And the funniest thing about it is we went in there and we're watching the game, and you turn around and we had our own Hebrew national hot dog guy.
Oh, wow.
It's just our own little guy. He's like, you want another hot dog? I'm like, so you're just standing here for us? There's only 5 of us. That's my job,
Wow.
making us drinks or whatever and hot dogs. And so, it was just, it was one of those pinch me moments where you get to see such one of the most crazy, beautiful ball clubs. And then we got a chance to play on the street. It was an outdoor show, and David was just killing it. And, you get a guy like Don Elias, he just looked at me, we sat down at the bar after the show, and he said, man, that was a privilege. You play with so much heart. And I said, Don, can you write that down and sign it for me? And I was like, even if you're lying, Don, I just love you for that. But, and then the Boz Scaggs band was equally as just like, okay, how did I get in this band? Greg Fillinganes on piano. The guy has played on every great record, did all the Michael Jackson stuff. Quincy Jones' First Call. A guy named Drew Zing, who has been in, Steely Dan as a guitar player. I mean, just these guys you get to play with that are just phenomenal. And you're just, you know, okay, I must belong here. I'm going to let myself feel like I belong here, because then I'll play better. If I feel like I'm a fish out of water, guess what? I'm going to be flopping around, you know?
Yeah.
So I let it happen, you know?
So Joey, playing with all these musicians of that caliber, that makes you want to play better and better too? Or like,
Absolutely.
you know, I know you have to bring it, but does that inspire you?
Unquestionably. And here's the deal. It's just like if you were on a team, a football team, the quality of the handoff, it makes you just that much, you know, more conscious of the fact that that's why these guys get where they're going, because they're not out to prove that they're great. They're out to prove that they're great at what they're doing right then and there. And what they're doing is holding on to the hand of the guy on the left side and the right side, making sure that this chain doesn't break. It's I don't know how to describe it. It's a conversation where no words are spoken, and it's a relationship where you really physically touch each other. You just, wow, there's a thing that happens. It's a language, and it's a reason I do what I do. It's, you know, you wouldn't have to pay me for that part, but getting up at 4:00 in the morning and going to the airport and having some crabby monitor guy yell at you, yeah, I need money for that.
You know, Joey, before we let you go, and I know we could, there's a million stories that you have through the years, but this one's a hard one, and excluding all the people you played with. But if you were going to promote a concert, and you've done the promotion part, you've done all the music director for Debbie Gibson, you had played with some of the greats, as you just mentioned. If you were setting up a concert of 3 acts that you would want to see, who would they be?
Oh, wow. Living or dead?
Living or dead. Yep.
Yeah,
Living or
alive.
Yep.
Oh,
Dream
boy.
concert.
Three acts. Man, I'm a sucker for vocals and way back when kind of stuff. And I mean, you know, that's a hard one. You might stump me on this, because there's just too much in the pot for me. I mean, I didn't just grow up a rock and roller. I play all this different stuff.
Well, I'll call you tomorrow, and you
guess-
probably have 3 different answers. You know?
No, okay. No, yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, songs and conviction, singing, just telling a story. Glenn Campbell.
Wow.
Cool.
I mean, Glenn Campbell, Wichita lineman, can't tell me to do anything if that song's on other than listen. You couldn't get me to listen or to do anything but listen. I just the craftsmanship and the live things that he does as a player. And I got to play that song with him. So,
Wow.
I guess, on his birthday.
Man.
So, and then I guess I would want to kind of somehow squeeze myself into the Eagles somewhere. And, you know, maybe, I don't know. That show with all the original guys, seeing that and to be able to be involved in something like that, I guess. I don't know if that answers your question, but, who else? Living or dead? Man. And then I would want to be kind of right up next to Buddy Rich.
Oh, boy.
During Turtles Hole.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
A lot of charisma
You know,
there.
It's I like I said, there's just so many great bands. I mean, you know, I listen to old records like Ambrosia and things like that. Those great vocals, those backgrounds, those great songs. Biggest Part of Me. Then you got a guy like James Taylor. You got to get in there somewhere. But it's always about the feel. It's always about then a Tower of Power. Of course, come on, let's go. Steely Dan. It's not going to stop. You're going to have to tell me to shut up.
Well, it's always a tough one, and I'll bet you later on you'll think, I should have said this or that. But hey, Joey, I know we went long here. I appreciate your time. Congrats on all the success. It's obviously earned, and you've played with a lot of great people, and I know you continue to be in demand, and all the things, all the different routes you took there, whether it be playing, which you started out as, and all the other things, producing and writing, and tour manager and music director and all the big names you played with. And I know you're still playing, but if do you have a website that people can go to, or if they want to find out?
I'm a Facebook guy. I'm really accessible when it comes to that. I love the idea that, nobody gets too big. I mean, unless it's just like, okay, now I'm swamped, I can't even think about it, but I still have a one-on-one. I'm just a regular old guy on Facebook, Joey Finger.
Joey, thanks.
Say that again.
I just going to say I appreciate you coming on, taking some time.
I enjoyed it. I mean, you're catching me. I still feel like I'm moving a little bit because I just got off a cruise. We did Debbie Gibson's. We did the 80s cruise, and I feel a little equilibrium problem here and there. But I'm not kidding. It's we were out, just flew back from Aruba, and I'm glad I could be part of it. You guys obviously have a good thing going here. It was very enjoyable for me.
No, it's fun.
No, thanks, Joey, for coming on. It really means a lot to me to come on and talking about your career, and actually also, telling your story, your side of the story in this, the Minnesota music history segment that we have, that we started like almost a year ago, right, Dave?
Yeah.
And, we wanted to invite people on this podcast to tell their stories, because somebody has to start to kind of archive and document all that. Otherwise,
it goes away.
Lost.
My good friend Billy Larson, we just lost him this morning. He was part of a band called Rags, and so many stories go with that guy. But man, do I send love out to his family and close friends and stuff like that. I really appreciate what you're doing, because these things, they happened and they were enlightening, and so much more of that has to be shared, because for some reason we're trying to trend to sharing only negative stuff, and I don't see it that way. We gotta salt and pepper this world a little bit. Laugh a little, enjoy ourselves, get out there and enjoy music, because I'll tell you what, something else is going to find you if you don't find something good. If you wait for it, it could possibly be a negative. And just, Stuart, my buddy Stuart Pastor said, if you want anything substantial to happen in your life, you got to leave the house. So,
well, you did, Joey, and you're doing great. And we appreciate your time here on my first concert. And our thanks to the folks at AquariusHomeServices.com and also our friends at Star Bank. And again, go to starbank.net, by the way, or AquariusHomeServices.com, and you get all the information there. Also, for these podcasts, you can go to Apple, Spotify. You can go to TalkNorth.com, wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe. We'd love to have you as one of our subscribers. And again, as David just mentioned, it's really fun for us this last year to focus on Minnesota music and the talent that we have here, and the upcoming talent, which is so good as well. So it's just a great Minneapolis, St. Paul, a great music market, and continues to be that way. Our thanks to Joey Finger for joining us. And David, thanks, Joey. Really appreciate that, and continued success as well, by the way. And I hope that equilibrium comes back really, really soon for you.
Okay. Well, no cocktails until it does.
Yeah, there you go. David, thank you. I'll see you next week, if that's okay with you.
Yes, we'll see you next week.
We'll be in person. We're looking forward.
Not just virtually.
Yeah, that's right. He's Davide Rosso, Dave Lee here, my first concert, and we'll talk to you next week.